Hello everyone and welcome to this tutorial on full-stack pagination with Angular and Nodejs. Pagination is a crucial aspect of web applications, especially when dealing with large datasets. It allows you to break down data into smaller, more manageable chunks, enhancing the user experience and improving application performance. Without pagination, users might face long loading times and overwhelming amounts of data on a single page. In this tutorial, we will dive deep into the world of pagination and learn how to implement it effectively in full-stack application. We will start by building our Node.js API that serves paginated data, and then we will consume that API in an Angular frontend, displaying the data with smooth pagination controls. By the end of this tutorial, you will have a solid understanding of how to design and implement paginated API using Node.js and Express, create an Angular service to fetch paginated data from the API, build an Angular component to display the paginated data and navigation controls, enhance the user experience with smooth transitions and optimized performance. Whether you are a beginner looking to learn about pagination or an experienced developer wanting to improve your full-stack skills, this tutorial has something for you. So let's get started and unlock the power of pagination in your web applications. Before we start building our application, let's set up our development environment. We will need Node.js and Angular CLI installed on our machine. First, go to the official Node.js website at the nodejs.org and download the appropriate version for your operating system. Follow the installation instructions and open your terminal or command prompt and type node --version. This command will display the installed version of Node.js, confirming that the installation was successful. By the way, if you would like to watch a video how to install Node.js and how to manage different versions, you can go to my YouTube channel and watch one of my videos that I made about this topic. Next, let's install the Angular CLI globally by running the command ng npm install -g @angular/CLI. Press enter and it would be installed globally in your computer. The Angular CLI is a powerful tool that simplifies creating and developing Angular projects. With our environment set up, let's create a new Angular project. So navigate to the directory where you want to create your project and run this command ng new angular -pagination -app. Press enter. Follow the prompts, select your preferred styling format and choose to include routing in your project. I already have created my Angular project by using this command. It is currently open in my VS Code, so I will be using that one. So this is my Angular project that you can see it is installed already. Now let's create a new Node.js project for our API. Navigate to the directory where you want to create your API project. You can choose any directory for your Node.js project, but I would be creating the Node.js project within the same Angular project. So in this project, I will create a folder by using the command mkdir node pagination. Now go to your Node.js project, cd node pagination API. Once you are in that folder, run the command npm init -y and it will initialize your Node.js project, and you will see that there is a package.json file in that folder. We will also need to install few dependencies for our API, so run this command npm install express -mysql. So this will install the Express, a popular web framework for Node.js, and MySQL, a popular relational database management system. With our Angular and Node.js projects set up, we are ready to start building our pagination functionality. So next we will focus on creating a Node.js API that will serve the paginated data. Now that our development environment is set up, let's start building our Node.js API that will serve paginated data using MySQL. First, we will design a simple database schema for our example application. Let's say we are building a blog application where we want to paginate through blog posts. We can create a MySQL table for our blog post using a simple SQL query. But before that, make sure that you have the MySQL server installed in your machine already, and open the MySQL client so that we could insert the SQL query. So if you have not installed it already, I would quickly tell you what to do. So I am currently using DB Engine. This is a very useful tool that I downloaded from the internet. Let me quickly show you. So this is the website from where I downloaded this software. So this is by the software Table Plus. So this is very useful and simple to use. Just download it and you can start using it. So I already have downloaded and started it, and I also have created MySQL service. So if you install it for first time, you have to click on the plus icon, and here you have to select the database and you have to select the MySQL version. So I selected this one and I did not specify any password. So once it is created, I clicked on the start button and now it is starting. It is started and the green color is there. That's when it is currently running. So in order to open that, just click on this arrow, click on the open in Table Plus. Again, I'm telling you that you can use any client, any MySQL client that you would like to use, like MySQL Workbench. But in my case, I will be using this one. So just if you are also using the same software, then click on this. It will open the database in the Table Plus. Once that is done, open the SQL editor in your MySQL client, and here we will add the command that we want to run. So you can see that I have added this command. Now we need to run it. This will create a table for us. So let's run that command by selecting it and run current. It is saying that query 1 error, no database selected. So we have to select the database as well first of all. So let me delete it and click on this icon, and currently there was no database. So we have to create obviously a new database. So you can give it a name blog or whatever, and you can select the encoding. Okay, click on the OK and double click on the blog. Now in the SQL editor, you can run the query. This time it says that one query executed without any error. Okay, I reloaded the database and I can see the table has been created with these fields. Next, let's set up database connection using MySQL package. So as you know, we already have installed the MySQL package. So now let's create a file called database.js. So let's go back to the project in the editor, and this is the folder that contains the Node.js project. Here I will create a file database.js. By the way, here you can see that in the source control it is showing too many files after we have created this project. It is saying 660 files, but we did not create that many files. It is because it is considering the node module folder in this project. So in order to fix that, if you are also using Git, then open the Git ignore, and here just add node-pagination-api/node modules. So in this way, it will ignore all of the node modules folder files. Okay. Now you can see there are only 4 files that we changed so far. Once your MySQL database file is created, just add this piece of code here. First, we imported the MySQL library and saved in the MySQL constant. And now we are creating a connection and saving the connection in the connection variable. And here you have to specify the host. Here you have to specify the user. In our case, it is root, and the password is empty, and the database is blog. Save it. And once the connection is created, we will call the connect function, and we gave it a callback function where we are checking if there is an error, then show this error, otherwise show the success to the console log. And once everything is done, we are exporting the connection so that we could import it in our application and start using it. Now let's insert some seed data in the blog post table to test our pagination. You can use this SQL code that I am going to use. So here let's add few more sample data. Okay, you can see I have added a lot of sample data. So now I will just copy this SQL and I will open the SQL editor, and here let's paste it and run the command run current. It is saying that one query, okay, 3 rows affected. So if you double click on this and click on data, actually you have to click on the reload to get the latest results, and you can see all of the data is here and it is showing that we have 35 rows. Now let's create REST API endpoint for fetching paginated blog post. We will use Express to define our API routes. So create a new file called routes.js. Routes.js has been created, and now I will add my code. So first we have to import these libraries like Express library, and then we need to create a router by using express.router. Then we need to create import the database file that we just created. Once that is created, so I created my first endpoint with the name /post, and we have some constant like page number and limit that is coming from the query. So whenever we will send the request to this, we will be sending the page and limit, and we are extracting that from the query. And then we are creating the offset variable that is calculating based on these two variables, page and limit. Once that is done, we will write our query. So here I have written my query, select all from blog post, limit this and offset this. Now we are passing the limit and offset. We are using this way because we want to avoid SQL injection. So this will handle the SQL injection thread by itself automatically. You will not have to worry about that. Once that is done, we will handle the error. If there is an error, then we will show that error in the console, and we will send the response with the 500 status and with the JSON error message. Okay. Once that is done, I will run another query that will get the number of total blog posts. Okay. And within that, I will check the error. So if there is an error, any error in that query, we'll show that error. And after that, we will calculate the total number of posts. So we got an array from this response of this query, and we got the data from the zero index, and we are getting the total property from our query. And now we are calculating the total number of pages by using this syntax, total post divided by the limit, and we are using math.ceil function on it. Once everything is done, we will simply send back the response. So we will send this response to the user, like it would be a JSON. So we will return this JSON response to the client that we have an object in it that has post and total number of pages and the current page, and this current page is coming from here. So in this code, we defined a route for fetching paginated blog post, and the page and limit query parameters are used for pagination. Page represents for current page number and limit represent for the number of posts per page. We use the limit and offset clauses in SQL query to paginate the results. We also perform a separate query to count the total number of blog posts to calculate the total number of pages. Finally, we return the paginated posts, total pages, and current page number in the response. Now that we have defined our API routes, let's create the main Node.js app using the Express and consume the router. So let's create a new file here in our Node.js project, app.js, and we need to add some basic imports. Once that is done, we need to add some middleware. So for now, we are using only one middleware that is compulsory in order to receive and process the request body. So we will be able to access the request body in the form of JSON with this approach. And now we need to register our routes. So these routes are coming from this file that we just created. And now let's start the server. So here we have defined a port. We are using the environment variable for the port, but if it is not defined, we will use a default port 3000. Then we are listening to this app on that port. Once server is started, we will see this message in the console. So in this code, we imported the Express module and create an instance of Express application called app. We also import the routes module that we defined earlier. So we use the express.json middleware to parse incoming JSON requests. Now that we mount our API routes by using API.use function, this means that all routes defined in the routes module will be prefixed with the /API. Finally, we started the server by calling app.listen and specifying the port number. You can set the port number using an environment variable process.env or fallback to default port. Now let's update routes.js file to export our router. So at the end, I will add module.exports is equal to router. With these changes, your Node.js app is now set up to use Express and consume the API routes. To run the application, let's execute a command. I started the server by running this command on the port 3000. Once it is started, I ran this, I hit that endpoint in my browser and we can see the response. And I also opened that the postman and hit that endpoint in the postman and I got the same response, but this is more easy to read here. Now you can see that the pagination is working. You are on the page 1. This is an object with the property post. It has an array with the 10 elements, 10 items in it. Then we have total number of pages, that is 4. So all of this is totally dynamic and being calculated. And this is the current page, that is currently 1. You can modify the number of the limit per page, like you can change it to 20. If you do that, the total number of pages will become 2 instead of 4. Let me show you. Here you can see now total number of pages are 2. So let me keep it 10 and now let's change the number of page to see if that work. I set that 2 and now you are now page number 2 that you can see here, and the IDs of the posts are different than before. So remember to ensure that your MySQL database is running and properly configured before running the Node.js app. That's it. You have now created Node.js app using the Express and connected it to your API routes. The app is ready to serve paginated data from your MySQL database. Now that our Node.js API is set up and serving paginated data, let's move on to the Angular frontend and create a service to handle the API requests. So first open your Angular project in your preferred IDE or text editor. I am using the VS Code as you saw, so I will continue using it. I will just collapse the Node.js project and now we can see our Angular project here. We will start by creating Angular service that will be responsible for making HTTP routes to our Node.js API. So Angular provides HTTP client module which simplifies the making HTTP requests from our Angular application. To generate a new service, open your terminal or command prompt and navigate to your Angular project directory and now run this command ng generate service blog post, press enter. Once that is done, let's go back to our Angular project and in the app directory you will notice that the blog service has been created. First of all, we will add this. Okay, I added the API URL private property in this service and I have given it the path of my endpoint that I want to hit. Now we want to inject the HTTP client, but before doing that we have to provide the HTTP client service. So as I'm using Angular 17, so you have to go to the app config file and here you have to add a function provide HTTP client and call that function. Okay, so with that the HTTP client would be provided globally and would be available throughout your application. Once that is done, we can inject our service. So you can either inject with the constructor or you can use the latest method, that is using the inject function. So I will use HTTP inject and pass it the HTTP client service. And now let's import it. Make sure to import it from Angular common HTTP module library. And once the service is injected, we can create our function to get the posts. All right, let's break down the code. So first of all, we imported the necessary dependencies, including the injectable, HTTP client, inject, and observable. We define the blog post service here and decorate it with the injectable and to make it injectable throughout our application. Then we declare a private property API URL that holds the URL of our Node.js API endpoint. Then we injected the HTTP client service, which allows us to make HTTP request. Then we defined a method called getPosts that takes the page and limit parameters. This method will fetch the paginated blog post from our API. So inside the getPosts method, we create an object called params that holds the page and limit values as query parameters. We use the http.get method to make a get request to our API endpoint, passing the params object as the second argument. To get post method return, the get post method returns an observable that emits the response data from API. Now that we have blog post service in place to handle API requests, let's create an Angular component to display the paginated blog post and implement the pagination controls. To generate a new component, open your terminal or command prompt, navigate to the Angular project and run this command: ng generate component space blog post list. Press enter. This command will create a new component named blog post list component that you can see a folder has been created for that component. So now open the blog post list component TS file and let's update it. So first of all, we need to define some necessary variables or properties. Blog post, we gave it a default value. Okay. Then we need to inject the blog post service. For that, I will create a variable private blog post service is equal to inject. Make sure to import this function and pass it the blog post service that we created earlier. Now we need to implement the onInit hook lifecycle method, and now we need to implement it. So let's define ng onInit, and here let's call the function this dot fetch posts, and now we need to define this function. Okay, so this is our fetch post function that is getting the function from our service, and we are updating our local properties of this class. Then we need to define two more functions, previous page and the next page. Now let's break down the code and I will explain everything one by one. So on the top, we imported the necessary dependencies including the component onInit, inject and blog post service. Then we define the blog post list component class to decorate it with the component. We declare the properties to store the fetched blog posts and current page number and total number of pages and number of posts per page limit. So then we injected our blog post service. Then we implemented the onInit interface and defined the ng onInit method, which is called when the component is initialized. So inside this method, we call the fetch posts method to fetch the initial paginated blog posts. So here the fetch posts method uses our blog post service to fetch the paginated blog post based on the current page and limit. We subscribe to the returned observable and update the blog post and total pages properties with the received data. We define the previous page and next page methods to handle the navigation between pages. These methods update the current page property and call the fetch post method to fetch the corresponding paginated data. Now let's design the user interface for displaying the paginated blog post. So open the blog post list component.html. But before that, make sure to save this file and let's add some code here. I will use this syntax for, and here we have to define the post of posts. Let's pass this data within these curly braces. H2 to H3 tag with the paragraph content that is showing the content and title. Now at the end, we need to add some pagination elements that will help us to paginate. So now let me explain everything here. In this HTML template, we use the for loop to iterate over the blog post array and display each blog post title and content. We add navigation controls with previous and next buttons. The click event bindings call the respective methods in the component, and the disabled bindings disable the buttons when on the first or last page. We display the current page number and total number of pages. Finally, update your app.component.html file to include the app-blog-post-list selector to display the blog post list component. So let's open it. Okay, so here I'm going to get rid of all of the code that I have on this page, delete all of the existing code, and here I will add app-blog post. But you will notice that it is not giving me any suggestion. That looks like that it is not available to use in this component. To make it available, as you know, we are using standalone components here, so we have to import our app blog post list component. Okay, we have imported that in the imports array. Now if you start typing, you will see the suggestion in the VS Code. So with these changes, your Angular component is now set up to fetch paginated blog posts from the API, display them in the user interface, and provide the navigation controls for moving between pages. Now let's run your Angular application using this command ng serve. So we got an error here, for loop must have a track expression. So let's go back to the HTML. Here we are using for loop, but we also have to add track post.id, and we were using incorrect variable name, so correct name is blog post. So let's copy it and replace it here. Okay, now if you save it, then all errors have been gone. You can see that the component is being loaded, but right now there are no posts in it, and pagination is still also not working. So let me see what's wrong with it. So let's open the inspect element. It has course error. So in order to fix that problem, you have to go back to your Node.js project, and in the app.js, you have to install another library from npm. So run the command npm installs cors course, and once it is installed, you have to use app.use. So make sure to import the course function from the course library, save it, and now run it again. So now run the server again by running the command npm node app.js. Okay, so if you add this middleware here, then it will whitelist all of the requests coming from any client. So for now it will bypass this security, but the good practice is that once you are ready, you deploy to the production, you have to add options here that will, you have to provide proper list of the origins that you want to whitelist. Otherwise anybody can hit your backend and can put unnecessary load on your website that you may not want. Okay, so for now this is sufficient. So this is how we will begin. Okay, now let's reload it, and this time you saw that the data has been loaded. All of the posts are visible, and you can see 10th blog post. If you click on the next, then we should see the 11th and so on. You can see the second page is visible now, and you can go to the last page as well. So this is a last page, and this has less than 10 items in it. If you click on the previous, it will take you back. Okay, so congratulations, you have successfully implemented pagination in your Angular application, fetching data from a Node.js API, displaying it with navigation controls. Feel free to enhance the styling and layout of your component to make it more visually appealing and user-friendly. Now that we have implemented basic pagination in our Angular application, so let's explore some ways to enhance the user experience and make our application even more user-friendly. So we will implement smooth transition between pages. To provide a smooth and seamless navigation experience, we can add transitions when moving between pages. Angular's animation system allows us to create smooth transition easily. First of all, we need to import the necessary animation module in our component where we want to implement the animation. So as we want to implement it in our blog post list component, so let's go back to the blog post list component here, and in the imports array, let's add the module browser's animation module. Make sure to add the import statement as well, like this. Now update your blog post list component HTML file to wrap the blog post list in a container with an animation trigger. So for that, here I'm going to wrap it in a div, and here let's add page animation is equal to blog post dot length. Okay, so now in your blog post list component.ts file, import the animation functions and define the animation trigger. So on the top, I have imported these things from the animations library: trigger, transition, style, and animate. Now in this object, I will add the animations section that has the definition for our trigger. So this name is exactly same that we added in the HTML, this one. And here we are adding two transitions. One is on enter and second one is on leave. So on enter, it will set the opacity 0, make it invisible, and it will translate it vertically 20 pixel. And then we will add animation of speed of 500 ms, and then we will set the opacity to 1 and fix the transition that we added earlier, 20 pixel to 0. So that will revert that transition back and opacity back to 1 to the visible state with the smooth animation with the speed of 500 ms. And if on leave, it will again set the opacity to 0 and translate it y to 20 pixels, and all of this will happen with animation. So this animation trigger will fade in the blog post when entering the page and fade them out when leaving. So I made some changes. So here I was using the length, and we know that length never changes. The number of posts will not change, so that's why I have added the current page, because that changes every time when you interact with these buttons. And whenever there is a change, then this animation would be triggered based by using the trigger functions that we had defined here. And also I have updated this trigger as well. So in this trigger, in this array here, first element is the state. I have defined the initial state from where it has to start. So I have added the void here. Make sure to add the state from the Angular/animations, and the opacity is 0 and minus 20 pixel horizontal would be the transform translate x. Okay, and then here I have used the term increment and decrement. So, and here I have added this style, and on animation this style. Okay, so this is all you have to know about it for now. If you want to know in depth about the animations, I can make a separate video how to work with the animations, and I will go in a lot of depth and make different things in animation. So if you would like me to cover that, then please leave your suggestions in the comment section below. I will look at them and will try to make video about them as well in future. So for now, I have provided the source code of this work in the GitHub, so you can download it from the description section below. So now it's time to test it. So you can see we are on the 4th page, and if you click on this button, then the next page appears with the animation. Okay, you can work on that, play around that, and make it better if you want to. It's totally up to you. Next, we will be adding the search or filtering functionality to allow users to search or filter the paginated data. You can add to allow users to search or filter the paginated data, you can add a search input field and update the API request to include the search query. So let's go to the HTML file of our component, and here on the top I will add this input, but in order to use it, as you can see, there are errors. In order to use the ng model, we have to import the form module in the component ts file, as I'm using standalone here as well. So here I can add the forms module in the imports array of this component like that. Okay, now in the blog post list component.ts file, let's add the search query property and the on search method. Okay, so I have added the search query and on search change function, and whenever this function would be called, it will set the current page to 1 immediately. So for example, if you are on the last page, it will immediately take you back to the first page, because you have interacted with the filters. Okay, and we will immediately recall the fetch post method that will fetch the data for the first page. Now let's update the fetch post method to include the search query parameter in the API request. So here I will add this dot search query, but I'm getting error because we have not defined the third parameter in our function in the service. So let's go there and define it. So now here I will add a property search query string. Okay, now in this parameter we need to add the search query property, but we have to make sure that the spellings are same and we are expecting the same property with the same name. So in the backend in the Node.js, and now we have to get the query search query, and by default I will give it the empty value and we will use it here. So here I will define the third parameter here, search query, and here I will add the where condition. I will define a variable where is equal to, by default it is empty. Okay, here I will add where title like this, order by ID descending, limit this and offset this. Okay, now save it and let's restart the server. I made a mistake here. I mistakenly removed this section, that's why there was an error. So now let's try it again. Let's restart the server and now it is working fine. Okay, now it's time to test it. So before testing it in Angular app, I will test it in my Postman. So here we got an internal server error. By the way, now we have to be careful about the order. Search query has to be on the first position because we are expecting it at the first position. Now let's start the server again. So we have to add another thing here. We have to wrap it %sign like that, and let's add the $sign. Okay, save it, and with that it started to work. I did not specify anything and it is still searching. But if you add the search query, let me make sure the exact same name. So if you specified the search query is equal to maybe 25th, search it. Okay, let me set the page back to the 1, and now you can see all of these search results are visible. Let me put this instead of that one, and you can see only one item came in. Now it's time to test it in the browser as well. So let's go back to the code and make sure everything is still in the correct position. Okay, now let's search. Let's say I want to search for the 3rd or 20. I have to make sure that I'm passing the correct parameter to the backend API. So let's test it, check that out. So here we are passing the search query, but I did not pass it here yet. That's why it was not working. So let's pass it in this way. And now let's search for the TWENT with 20. And you can see search is working. Post 3rd, you can see it is showing all of the titles with the word 3rd in it. To improve the performance of your application, you can optimize the API requests. Some best practices include implementing caching mechanisms to store and reuse previously fetched data, using pagination parameters efficiently to limit the amount of data transferred over network, implementing debounce or throttle techniques to prevent excessive API requests while typing in search field. When designing the pagination UI and UX, consider these best practices. First, provide clear and intuitive navigation controls such as previous and next page numbers. Display the current page number and the total number of pages. Allow users to change the number of items per page if applicable, and use appropriate loading indicators or placeholders while fetching data. Handle empty or no result scenarios gracefully. Ensure responsiveness and adopt the pagination controls for different screen sizes. By implementing these enhancements and following best practices, you can create a more engaging and user-friendly pagination experience in your Angular application. Remember to test your application thoroughly and gather user feedback to continually improve the pagination functionality and overall user experience. Congratulations on making it to the end of this tutorial on implementing pagination in Angular with Node.js API. Let's quickly recap the key points we have covered. We started by setting up our development environment, installing the Node.js and Angular CLI, and creating new projects for both backend API and Angular frontend. We designed a simple database schema for our blog application and set up MySQL database connection in our Node.js API. We created a REST API endpoint in Node.js to fetch paginated blog posts from the database, accepting pagination parameters such as page number and limit. On Angular side, we generated a service to handle API requests and created methods to fetch paginated data from the Node.js API. We implemented an Angular component to display the paginated blog post, designed a user interface with pagination controls, and loaded navigation functionality to move between pages. Finally, we explored ways to enhance the user experience by implementing smooth transitions, adding search or filtering functionality, optimizing API requests, and discussing best practices for pagination UI UX. By following along with this tutorial, you have gained valuable knowledge and practical experience in implementing pagination in a full stack application using Angular and Node.js. I encourage you to apply concepts learned in this tutorial in your own project. Whether you are building a blog application, an e-commerce website, or any other data-driven application, pagination is a crucial aspect to consider for improved user experience and performance. To further expand your knowledge and skills, these are some additional resources and references you can explore that I will also share in the description. First one is for Angular documentation, then Node.js documentation and Express documentation. And then we have MySQL documentation, Angular material, pagination component, UX best practices for pagination. Remember, practices make perfect. Don't hesitate to experiment, modify, and adopt the code to suit your specific needs and requirements. If you found this tutorial helpful, please consider liking, commenting, and sharing it with others who might benefit from it. Your support and feedback are greatly appreciated. Thank you for joining me on this learning journey. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and feel empowered to tackle pagination in your own projects. If you have any questions or suggestions, please leave them in the comments below. Happy coding and best of luck with your future development efforts.